Okay, so I'm Dr. Deirdre Hughes. I have been in the careers profession for over 35 years. Think of me as a triangle when you think about me and my work, and that is in the middle of the triangle, young people, adults, skills, employment, training. All of that has really wrapped around most of my professional career. I've worked in public, private, and third sector. And I'm a researcher. I wear a number of different hats. I have a company called Career Chat UK, which is pioneering technology innovation. I'm also the owner of DMH Associates, where we've been researching careers for well over 20 plus years. And I'm a policy advisor. We have some people from Northern Ireland who've registered for this event. And I do need to make sure I've got the recording on. Sharon, just reassure me that our recording did say we were in
Yep, I
record
can
mode.
see we're recording.
Excellent. We have colleagues from New Zealand, from Scotland, as well as mostly colleagues from England and the UK. So, yes, that's me. And I'm going to hand over to Sharon briefly to introduce herself, and then we'll have a look at what we're going to do in the next sort of 45 minutes or so together.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Sharon Walpole. I have been working over 20 years in vocational apprenticeship and early careers sectors. I've been a CEO of Not Going to Uni and also had a range of other companies delivering information in the sector. Happy to say I'm now self-employed, so I do consultancy work, but I am supporting training providers, particularly in this space, which we can talk about later. And prior to that, I worked for 7 years in a college. So I've kind of got a leg in all camps to understand. And this is something that is quite interesting and personally, professionally relevant for me too.
Great, thanks, Sharon. Now, we had over 40 people registered to attend. I know a lot of people really wanted to get the recording of this, but for those of you who are with us in person, let's set some ground rules, which is there is absolutely no such thing as a silly question. So, as we move along our presentation, and if we have time, we'll try and bring your voice into the conversation. But use this 45 minutes really to feel in a safe environment where you can ask anything, and to the best of our ability, we'll answer this. So, why I decided to host this particular topic as part of our hashtag All Things AI webinar series is that I've had a number of colleges and independent training providers contact me to say, Deirdre, we need to know more about the new inspection framework, just to hear it from someone who's got a background and experience in careers education, information, advice, and guidance. I've trained teachers, careers advisors, community workers on all aspects of CEIAG. And we'll just unpick that little acronym in a second. So, this is all about what the new Ofsted framework means for your setting and how to build capacity in a tight budget, which is the other thing that I hear a lot whenever I'm working with organisations. So, this is what we're going to do, a very warm welcome. Perhaps in the chat, is there one thing that you would really like to get out of this session? What would success look like for you whenever you leave here? What's the one thing that you really, really might want to have as a takeaway? And by the way, we've got some free takeaways for you as well, which I'll say more at the end. So we're going to do the scene setting, why this, why now, the policy and inspection moment. We're going to look at what CEIAG is and why does it really matter. We'll look at some definitions, duties, and the distinctive landscape for training providers. The new Ofsted framework, now this is very much based on my knowledge of working with Ofsted inspectors, but also just having first-hand account from providers whom have recently been inspected. And that's where Sharon is going to come in, because Sharon actually has been deep in the middle of an inspection, and she's going to share her wisdom and her observations on what she has taken away from that. Then we're going to look at high quality practice. What does it look like? And you will have brilliant practice yourself already. Again, anything that you're doing that you think, I'm really proud of this in our kind of careers offer to our apprentices or trainees, just pop it in the chat. And Sharon will keep a lookout and guide me, let me know what's there. And then we'll have a Q&A, an open discussion. Every time we have a webinar, this is webinar number 10, hosted by Career Chat UK, the time flies by. So there's never enough time. So we're going to do our best to whiz through, but just use that chat facility to ask us questions.
Deirdre, we had Liz say that one of the things that she would like to know a little bit about would be inspiration in terms of careers in their level 2 to 6 cross routeway provision.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we can, yeah, definitely, Liz. We'll sort of pick that up. I'll make reference to how one college is actually approaching that in a very unique way. And if anything we share with you afterwards, you want to have a follow up, then you'll have our contact details and we can talk about it in a little bit more detail. So that's great. So, what is careers education, information, advice, and guidance? And why does it matter now, this sort of moment in time? So, I know people on the call here, you probably are familiar with this, but it's always good in every case never to just assume that everybody knows what the acronym is. Sometimes it'll sit as CE, which is the careers education piece. And that's very much around that structured, planned learning about career development embedded in the curriculum. Now, why it's really, really important, the whole CEIAG, is that in the new Ofsted inspection framework, it's really looking at all aspects, how you're using information in an educative way so that the students, the apprentices, have access to accurate, up-to-date labour market information, pathways data, and a wide range of opportunities. And one of the ways that's quite new in the new framework is the emphasis very much on inclusion, participation, and development. These three, if you like, big pillars are really what's sort of underpinning a lot on the new framework. Inspectors are interested in what advice are the students or apprentices getting? How is it personalised? And even though you might think we're giving it, the sort of learning walk, as it were, with students is very much around do they know that one, it's available, two, that they've accessed it, and three, is it valuable? And then the final piece is that in-depth, if you like, expert advisor support for informed reflection and decision making to help with that kind of personal development and progression. Now, in some cases, independent training providers don't have, if you like, a dedicated careers advisor. Maybe in the chat, you could sort of just send us a little signal. Are you in that position? I know that we've got college providers who are in the room and also those who will be watching this recording. But in essence, one of the things that I will share at the end of the session with you is I want to put in the chat that only this week at a European level, there was a new framework for lifelong guidance published. I've got the link, but while I'm sharing the slides, I can't pop it in the chat, but I promise to do that. And there's about 24 references to apprentices in that lifelong learning framework. Now, I just mention it because when you're sort of looking to evidence your work, it's always helpful that you can point, if you like, to a reference point. And this is a brand new CEDAFOP released evidence-based lifelong guidance framework. So I think that's your first little takeaway, and I hope that you'll find that useful. So the new Ofsted framework, what's changed and what it means for you. Sharon, you were recently involved in an inspection. When you were involved, what was the one thing that you noticed that maybe had changed from past, as it were, Ofsted inspections?
Well, I think you said it quite clearly at the beginning, but certainly with inclusion and even being very as specific as care leavers and through SEND um, and how they are being specifically catered to. But as you also said, it's the evidencing of that that can be the most challenging because quite often training providers have a system where they do initial assessments and so on and so on. They do collect data, but it can be a difficult thing to get even for participants to or learners to say what if they have neurodiversity or if they have other issues. So it's something that you glean along the way, but it is something that's been very, very, very much at the front of the agenda. And I think it goes hand in hand with the move with schools of trying to move more young people with SEND and learning disorders back into mainstream school. So I think that's why there's a lot of looking at that.
So we'll have a little look at in the new framework, the priority groups and what Ofsted are looking for. I just want to say, if you didn't know this already, this is the biggest change in 30 years in terms of how providers are inspected. And is anyone who's on the call here on the session, has anyone actually been inspected recently? Or have you sort of got any strong views about this? I want to just share with you the grading first of all. And there's three things to take away for sure. One is there's no more single overall grade. From November, Ofsted awards separate grades for up to 7 evaluation areas. The FE and the skills report cards now list up to 16 individual grades plus published performance data. So, in essence, Ofsted would say there's nowhere to hide in a weak area. The deep dive that many of us would have been used to, I worked in an FE college myself. You'd have been kind of getting all your portfolios, all your files. That deep dive approach is gone after sector feedback on workload. Inspectors now gather evidence through professional dialogue, these learning walks, and direct conversation with the learners, the staff, and the employers. So if you're someone like me that loves a good, tidy file and portfolio and things to look at, that's not necessarily the only thing or that they would be expecting to look at. And then everyone starts from scratch, so previous outstanding or good grades cannot be carried forward. Every provider is graded fresh under the new 5-point language. And outstanding good logos should be removed after the inspection. Since November, there were 140 inspections. And this is the new 5-point grading scale. Exceptional, that's transformational impact, particularly on disadvantaged SEND learners, sustained for 3 years or more. And really, no significant under-addressed improvement areas. This is, if you like, the absolute creme de la creme around what exceptional would look like. Then there's the above average, which is a very strong standard. All expect it, and strong standards should be fully met. And all that means is that all criteria in the grade must be satisfied. There can't be one little exception in any of the areas. The expected standard is, if you like, how Ofsted would describe this is the high bar that we set. This is the inspector's baseline assumption, covering all statutory, professional, and non statutory guidance. Needs attention is an interesting one because, it speaks for itself, doesn't it? The expected standards not met due to inconsistency or maybe limited impact. But Ofsted now, in their new culture of inspection, which they are very keen to communicate, and I've spoken to a few colleges who've been through the new inspection process, that needs attention is not a failure. There's an opportunity for improvement. And what Ofsted are doing now is they're giving you a chance to, if you like, address where there has been a weakness identified. And they will come back again and actually relook at that with you. So it's a much more, gives you a chance to actually put right something that maybe just wasn't quite in place when they came. And then obviously, urgent improvement means that there are some serious failures. The DFE, it triggers a contractual risk classification, and it applies to inclusion and leadership judgments as well. So the inspection lens is all about achieve, belong, and thrive. And I just want to make the connection now to careers education, information, advice, and guidance. Again, in the chat, tell us if you've got a dedicated team for careers education, information, and guidance, advice, and guidance, or maybe it's just you, or it could be something in between. We'd love to just understand your context a bit more. So, really achieve academically and personally, that the learners make this measurable progress, they attain qualifications, and you can read here what each of them say. The sense of belonging, that they feel valued and are part of the community, that they actually attend, they engage, and behave positively and contribute to the provider community. What they're looking for is that link to the CEG, and the first one is about progression planning, destination data, realistic goal setting. Belonging is all about that there are strategies in place that reduce, if you like, the possibility of dropout, or that the students might drift or become disengaged or withdraw. And Thrive is all about benefit from the right systems and the overs, safeguarding, being supported, being able to flourish whatever their background. And this is again where targeted and tailored support from a CEIAG context for those vulnerable learners of all types in your organization. Now, you may or may not be aware of the accountability framework, the numbers that actually trigger action. I'm not going to go into this in huge detail. You'll have it in the slides that we sent, but it's often someone will say to me, Deirdre, where does that fit, in terms of achievement, retention, withdrawals? And you'll see here that these are, if you like, just giving you an idea of how that accountability framework runs alongside the Ofsted inspectors' work. And really, to look at this through a CEIAG lens, it's about goal clarity and completion when it comes to achievement rates, pastoral guidance and retention, early career interventions that reduce dropout. And in this session, I'm going to give you some insight to how you can use chatbot technology to actually address that, as is being used in Hampshire as a case study. Again, past planned end date, that they've got momentum, that there's some clarity about the direction that they're going. And also that how do you capture the voices of the learner in terms of quality, satisfaction. And employer feedback is very much about the kind of what links have you got to employers, not just which employers are sponsoring your apprentice, but that wider sense of connectivity to the world of work. Sharon, I'll just go over to you for a second, because you mentioned about the inspectors focusing on different types of learners. This is the sort of list that they particularly mention. Again, in the chat, if there's any other groups that you feel that the inspectors, you would want them to take account of, pop it in the chat, and I'll try and see if I can have a quick look. But Sharon, yeah, your observation, you've worked with, for example, in the youth justice arena, haven't you? You've had a look there at what's going on with inspections.
I think this is one of the biggest changes. I think the other biggest change is moving from the massive amount of detailed paperwork as well, in wanting to see the live evidence Interestingly, they did want to have a chat with one of the employers as well that they're working with along the same thing, which, as most training providers probably know, that it's a bit tricky, that part of how do you expose them to other areas of workplace when you're working with a specific employer. But coming back to the different areas of the priority groups, all the priority groups that you list here are uh, hugely, hugely important for anybody who's doing bid writing as well. So you have to be able to evidence this. It was very strong, and I think probably a little bit surprising to one of the training providers I was working with how much emphasis was put upon it. But with most local authorities now, they are following the same line. So it's worth spending the time getting your house in order and being able to evidence it, not just for a potential Ofsted inspection and
Mm.
doing it, obviously, but having the information can help in two ways. Like I said, both for preparation for the Ofsted and for any potential approaches to bids.
Yes, one of the things that I asked of Ofsted was around what are they seeing from the 140 inspections since November. One of the things that they said that they are seeing is very much around that, making sure that the participants get like a wide range of experiences, even if they are with a particular employer, that actually there's some evidence that they're getting sort of exposure to an experience really of the world of work as much as possible. Not
Yes,
not always easy, but I think again being able to evidence that
yes. I
is.
think evidencing is the challenge, but it is also it can be within a sector as well, which helps. So even if you don't want to get in a situation where you are um, challenging your employer's point of view when you're working with some of these priority groups, it's also talking to those priority groups and speaking to them from the careers provision point of view of how they can approach it, how they can work in that particular pathway or sector, which kind of takes it a bit wider as well.
That's great. Again, I can't see the chat, Sharon. So if there's anything
At the moment, I
in
put
the
in a
chat,
question asking if anybody has a dedicated careers professional, but they're being very quiet at the moment. I promise to pop up if anybody says anything.
lovely. Thank you. Oh, well, it's good. Um, Hopefully this is making sense to everyone who's in the session here with us in person. So look, what does good CEIAG in practice look like, and can we now harness technology really to extend your reach further to help with that practical evidence, and also not just for inspectors, but to actually think about how AI can actually be part of that wider experience that I mentioned. I specialize in co-designing curated AI chatbots specifically for careers. And one of the things that I hear from all of the colleges and training providers is that their budgets are tight, that the teams are small, and there's a big responsibility on them around getting things right. So this is why I thought it was helpful to just set out six, if you like, CEIAG evidence threads. Again, you might in the chat want to say which of these do you find the most challenging. So a coherent documented strategy, what's your intent, what's the implementation, and what's the impact, not just a little paragraph on this. Actually, those three I's are really, really important in terms of your overall, if you like, strategy. And I think if you sort of look at what good careers practice looks like, if you were to even just look at how do you actually support a learner, it is about intent. The extent to which, where they are now really makes good sense to them and where they might like to go as their next step or indeed in the future, how they're going to implement that and then how that's going to impact on them as an individual, hopefully in a very positive and rewarding way. The sort of targeted support, I think we've covered. Someone mentioned to me about emotional based sort of school affective behavior. Again, that would come into these vulnerable groups, and there may be some that we haven't mentioned yet. But a takeaway is to think about how do you articulate your student cohort and, if you like, the different characteristics. The progression and destination data, where do they go? Is it tracked? Is it analysed? Is it acted upon? Again, where we are in 2026, we can now use large language models to actually help us with that maybe we couldn't do before. Employer engagement as a CEIAG asset, that sort of going as broad as you can around helping those students get career insight. Just for example, I spoke to an apprentice who dropped out of her course after I think it was 2.5 years. She was in construction. As a young woman in construction, she felt, in her words, there was lots of misogynistic behavior, and she really felt that it was toxic for her, and she actually just withdrew. Luckily, she's doing very well now in a different sector, but it's sort of making sure that the authentic learner voice is there, that the learners can describe, if you like, the information, advice, guidance that they've received, the options explored, and next steps without it being unprompted. I think that's a big ask sometimes with adolescents, because sometimes you have to sort of tease it right out of them. But that's where I think now we can use technology to good effect as well to create safe environments where they can actually share their experience. So that early identification and intervention, knowing who's absent, knowing where there's pastoral concern, and career uncertainty, they're all pre-withdrawal signals. And what Ofsted, and I know you as a provider as well. We don't want people to be on courses to be unhappy, to actually feel that they're a failure rather than a success. So some of this will not be unfamiliar to you, but it's just a reminder that actually these are the areas. So the reality is that many of the independent trainer providers operate with very lean staffing and tight margins. There's few dedicated careers teams, even in a college where we've been working in a college where there's 6 careers advisors, including the director, and thousands of students. So, sometimes it's a part-time assessor doubling up as a pastoral lead. There might not be a qualified careers advisor on the staff. It might be underfunded, poorly evidenced. And yet, the sort of withdrawal and retention thresholds apply, that sort of DFE framework, regardless of the provider size. At this point, we've got about 15 minutes left. So, in that time, I think if our audience is happy for me to continue and Sharon to sort of just share our experiences, and then we'll definitely stop sharing. If we've got time at the end, let's have a conversation so that we can hear your voice as well.
I think it would be good to come back as well to the question about the level 6 cross. And also that was echoed by Joanna, who was also talking about how she could take it forward for career development as well.
Well, I think we're landed in the right place to answer that question now. So really, one of the things I've mentioned is that I'm a tech innovator as well as a careers professional. And one of the colleges in Hampshire, the Sparshall College Group, contacted me because they were worried about their level 2 students in particular around their confidence and their motivation, but also further up the line, really, concerned about how students were thinking about their futures. We're in a cost of living crisis where with a generation who've locked down in COVID, we've got a lot of things going on around also an explosion in AI. So the Sparshall College Group invited us to actually develop an AI student companion that the student could actually check in at any time with their AI companion and see how they were feeling about their course. Did they like it? How did they actually arrive at the course? Um, my mother told me I had to do it. My boyfriend was on it. I followed my friend. These are just a few examples. And it's called Future Track. And outside of this sort of lunch and learn session, I'll give you our contact details. If you want to see it in action, you can see over 1,000 users in the college have used it and absolutely love it. And really, the reason they love it is that what it's doing is it's actually helping them to explore careers in a safe way. But the college has a dashboard, an intelligence dashboard that sits behind it. So they can actually look at the trends, anonymized trends. And more recently, we've been working with the college to actually look at which students are not engaging with the chatbot, as well as those who are. The actual student, the apprentice, can then choose if they want to download the conversation they've had with the chatbot and do whatever they like with it. But they can also request it to go into student services, and using Calendly, they can directly book an appointment with a careers advisor who'll receive their career exploration journey in advance and be able to hit the ground running. And that's the sort of thing that showing Ofsted, for example, that you're harnessing technology, but also that you are capturing the voice of the students. I often get asked, what's the difference between Microsoft Copilot, maybe Gemini, ChatGPT, and the two chatbots that we have developed? One is CC, which stands for Careers Innovation, Careers Intelligence, and the other one is the AI student companion called Future Track. And really, I always say to people, look, we're in a place now where generic large language models are going to be everywhere. I've got Microsoft Copilot on my laptop whenever I bought it. It came with the package. In the chat, Sharon, maybe, you might want to put in and others might want to put in, what, if any, large language model do you use to help you in your day-to-day work? I spent yesterday in Durham with AI champions in the council. We were talking about the sorts of systems that they use. But there are differences in what's called generic large language models, like these on the middle column, and having a curated one that's actually got built-in safeguards, it's got knowledge limits, it's got curated conversation flows. The audit trail for Ofsted, will you be able to get transcripts and interaction records as a result of using something like Copilot? No, no, you won't, but you will with something like CC and Future Track. The curator approach is aligned to professional standards, where again, there are no sector standards. And again, the cost model is different around the large generic ones to CC. The most important thing that we find that when we're talking to colleges or training providers, apart from cost, is always about how can we make sure that we're safeguarding the trainee or the student. We're very lucky that Innovate UK awarded us a 6-month grant to take CC to the next level. And the very first thing that we did was we have actually built a very unique safeguarding hierarchy of need into the chatbot. Again, very happy to share that with you. I'm going to pause. Sharon, anybody in our webinar using AI technology as building their evidence base? Oh, you're on mute, Sharon.
We're not getting a lot of chat in the chat box, Deirdre.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Not to worry if there are no specific questions. Sharon, what about you? What are you using in terms of AI?
Like you, I use Copilot because it came with it. I'm quite keen to. Um, I've been gathering information about the different types that have got different strengths and weaknesses. Like Notebook LLM is supposed to be quite good for different things, and I think it's really important to understand that they're not just different brands; they do have different strengths and weaknesses. And what you have done with the AI is built it specifically for this. So you were comparing and contrasting with the other models, but it is almost a different model, so it's not like it has its own. I think it's a very important point that you're not just using something else that's out there.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've done, which as a handout I'll make available, is the secure framework. So if you're new to AI and you're new to sort of thinking about, right, how can I maximize this in a kind of delivery to my students and also bringing all the staff with you, this is a sort of academic, if you like, synthesized version of an academic paper that Chris Percy and I wrote, and it features in a book chapter, and I call it the Secure Framework. So, really, just thinking about safety, evolution, complementarity, user centeredness, reliability, and explicitness. And if, an inspector were to come to your institution and were to probe and ask you questions about your use of technology, you would at least have a nice anchor part, which is always easy to remember as well. As we kind of move towards the end of this, here's the quick wins that you can do. Audit your provision, map against the six threads, be honest about the gaps, and think about from the very beginning when you're auditing, thinking about how can I ensure that learning walk, which Ofsted pays such high attention to, actually is factored into our audit. Review your withdrawal data with a CEIAG lens. Test your learner voice right now. Ask three learners informally what CEIG they've received and what their next steps are. I would personally call it career support. What career support have you received and what are your next steps? If they can't tell you, neither can they tell an inspector. So maybe having a culture where you're sort of asking that regularly. Explore these AI assisted tools. Consider how a curated chatbot extends that reach for remote and part time and the reluctant learners. It's amazing that what we find from many students is they say they love the fact that using a curated chatbot, actually, they don't feel judged and they can say whatever they like to it in a very safe environment.
I think we've
Next.
also heard from young people as well is that they are very, very much used to using AI technology in their phone, and very comfortable. And as we know, a lot of them do spend a lot of time scrolling. And I think that they understand intuitively, which makes it not only safe and secure, but confident to use it.
Absolutely. And I think you've got first-hand experience of this, Sharon. Make your CEIAG evidence accessible. Ensure your strategy, your records, and your impact data can be found in 48 hours notice. No, not sort of locked away in a system
Yeah.
where someone's off on holiday and nobody can navigate it at speed.
Absolutely. I mean, this is one of the key things I was very impressed with at the most recent training provider that I was with. They were, as you can imagine, in the old days, particularly, but now you hear the alarm bells that Ofsted is coming and it's Wednesday. But because they had the systems in place, it made it pretty easy, and that became more a supporting framework for the personal stuff that was going on rather than the deep flapping around. And
Yeah,
this would be great,
exactly.
I think, having all this information for the CEIAG, like from the bot, would make it so much easier.
So three things really. CEIAG, gosh, it's hard to say.
I know.
CEIAG is now graded accountability matter, inclusion, participation, development, and achievement, they all carry evidence requirements. A poor inclusion grade has direct DFE contractual consequences, so it's not a soft risk. And I'll be quite frank, if I'm heading up a careers team and it's only me, and I know that I've got to cover a lot. Hopefully, what we're doing is helping you, empowering you to make the case that your work is important and that this element can't just be kind of like they might not look at it because they definitely will. Withdrawal and retention data is really where the careers education, information, advice, and guidance pays back. Um, the proactive careers support reduces uncertainty, improves retention, and it keeps the withdrawal rate below the threshold. And that's really where the technology, the Curator AI, this practical approach, it's professionally governed careers chatbot with an evidence base. As the students use the chatbot, we're collecting the voices of the students about what they like, what they don't like. And just to say that with Future Track at the Sparsholt College Group, what we've been able to do is produce a report for the head director of the college careers team to take to the senior leadership team to begin to inform practice about specific courses that based on the voices of the users. And everybody wins, I think, in that situation. I'm going to, after this session, we'll arrange for you to receive the recording and the slides. Again, you'll see our contact details here. This isn't about a hard sell on the technology, but actually that's what we specialize in, the design and the co-design of Careers chatbot technology. And we want everyone to succeed. So I'll stop sharing and then we have got 2 minutes left. Does anyone want to ask a question or come in at this point? Um, we've got lots of thank yous here. Um, and maybe everybody's busy, it's lunch, and we did say we were doing a little share here. We've got lots of thank yous in the chat. If you would like me to share in the chat now, I will pop in the lifelong guidance, brand new framework, hot off the press, that I mentioned was released just 2 days ago. I'm popping that in there now. I will also, I think what I'll do is I'll just send it out with the recording. And that is, we have developed a new teaching and learning resource for apprenticeship providers and training providers on if you're using the technology from a careers perspective, if you like, a do's and don'ts, ways in which you can actually enhance the experience for the student, but also for the staff as well. So I shall send you that. I shall send you the secure handout as well, so that hopefully in your important work, which really makes a difference, a positive difference to people's lives, that might reduce any stress that you might feel if you're being inspected, but most importantly, empower you to do the very best that you can to serve the learners that you're there to support. So thank you so much for coming. Sharon, last words from you.
It was very nice to join you on this. It's something I'm finding actually really positive and so exciting. I think it's been something that is much needed, and I'm glad it's sorry that it being a highlight and a spotlight on CEIAG, got it out, for training providers and apprenticeship providers, because particularly with these priority groups, it's essential, and it's great to see there's a way to do it. Very interesting session for me too. Thank you for having me.
Good. Well, thank you, everyone. And for those of you who weren't in the room but will be watching this recording, we have another webinar series planned on the 21st of May. You'll find all the information on our website and also exciting news that we will be releasing shortly, probably in June, a new resource bank of teaching learning resources, guides, and infographics. Some of it will be free. Others will be part of the license arrangement that we have with our customers and hopefully new customers. So if you want to find out more, you want some demos to see what we've talked about in action, please just contact us at www.ccchat.co.uk. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.